Justin Brown. It's good to be here, my man.
Thank you, Justin Wren. I appreciate you joining me today for what should be an interesting conversation because I have no idea what you're going to ask me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited. This is my first opportunity. I was talking with my girlfriend, Amy, who has 20 years of Austin radio experience and she started her third podcast now, and I told her that today I get to be it's my first rodeo at being a podcast host. So I'm really excited about this. I got to be a guest on your show, and that's fun to be part of your audience. I've been able to speak at Oklahoma DHS with you. I think really your first speaking engagement to the whole agency, right?
Yeah, October. I believe it was October the 1st, 2019. So before this thing that we knew of was COVID,
Right.
we got together and did the first ever all agency live stream.
Right.
So to 6,000 plus employees. And it was me sharing this concept of True North
Yes.
and all of the philosophical sort of anchors that we put together as leadership teams and as divisions. And then you came on and shared your story, which was really all about finding your why,
Right.
which, of course, deeply connects to the True North concept we have.
Yeah. Well, for your audience that might not have heard our last podcast where I was the guest, we flipped the script now.
Yep.
I'm really excited about interviewing you, but whenever I came and got to share my why, it was really because being a professional athlete, just introduce to myself to the crowd one more time, your listeners, being a professional MMA fighter, 14 years now, before that a national champion wrestler, I've always seen that it's the person, or I've always related, the highest performer and the Olympic gold medalist or the UFC champion, whoever it is, it's normally the person with the most reasons that usually wins. And you have a ton of reasons, but I love that the people here at DHS, the frontline workers, the people that are taken care of, whether it's the elderly or the foster care kids or the disabled, they're doing it because they have a heart of wanting to put love and compassion in action. And so I really wanted to come on the show and interview you. I talked to Amy, who's very experienced, and she goes, we need to get your story out, for your audience, for your podcast, which, go ahead and tell me what this podcast name means. I love it.
So the podcast is called 1,000 Stories,
Right.
and the reason behind the name is really, as I came into the agency, my impression of this organization, the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, commonly referred to as DHS,
Right.
had a stigma, and of course to this day still does, but has a stigma in the community, really driven by decades and generations of news stories online. And of course, news stories primarily lean towards sort of negative bent. And when in reality, the agency has those stories because we deal with humanity,
Right.
and there is brokenness in humanity. But the truth about what happens in the agency is actually 180 degrees different from that. So my impression was somewhat negative walking in. Early, I saw that really, honestly, for every bad story that you see online, there are 1,000 incredible stories that happen behind the scenes. And those are stories of visionary leaders and really incredible collaborations and beautiful efforts, projects that are happening.
Right.
And those stories just weren't being told. And so, honestly, there were a couple of stories that just resonated with me early on. And I thought, boy, the public needs to know about this. And there just isn't a proper venue to go deep enough to really build context around some of these wonderful people and stories. And so I thought, you might as well drone on for 45 minutes or an hour or whatever about some story with a guest who is, a particular visionary leader themselves. And so it's really an opportunity to celebrate these incredible stories that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that, man. I think podcasts, I'm starting my own. It's going to be called Overcome with Justin Wren. And I'm excited because I feel like we have a story of overcoming. And the thing that I love about podcasts is I think when they came out 10 years ago, I was fortunate enough to go on Joe Rogan's podcast about 10 years ago. And I've gone on pretty much every year since, 9 times now. And I've seen in my own life, but also through my nonprofit, and then the ripple effect through the world of other podcast guests and hosts, I've seen podcasts change the world, change the community they're in, whether it was locally, with a local podcast, or maybe nationally or statewide. And I've seen it go around for me personally. We've had thousands of donors from all 50 states in the United States and 60 different countries because of the power of podcast and getting story out. I think it returns us to our roots of being having long form conversations. You see that in the world religions and Christianity. You see it in Stoic philosophy. Like, people would tackle a theme or a topic and have a conversation for a whole evening or a whole day or multiple days. And because people have time, you want to dig into something. And we've shifted a lot, I think, over when media came around and to these short, I have to do it for fighting, interviews, and it'll be 5 interviews in a day on fight week, and they ask the same exact questions, and they're all only 2 to 3 minutes long, and people want more. So I love that you're doing this, because my perception from Texas to Oklahoma to Colorado to Iowa to Michigan, where I've lived, is like DHS, CPS, whatever it is, it's always been negative stories. Yeah. You hear about the tragic accident of someone in foster home care, or why they have to be removed for a family, or an elderly person who's being neglected, or whatever it is. Like, it's always bad, and you don't hear these hope-filled, hopeful stories that you are wanting to highlight. And so what I love right now is that I get to tee up and share a little bit of the man and ask questions about your life, but I know you in such a deep way. You've been one of my best friends, one of our biggest supporters of our nonprofit. But I remember the first day we met, I got to share my story with you because of one of our really close friends, Ryan Llewellyn, who we get to see tonight.
Absolutely.
And we went to lunch, and right afterwards, you took me to a place called Stonegate OKC. It was a building you bought for being from the private sector, right? And then for your business, which was a few different ones, but mostly senior living communities, right? Mm-hmm. And Jim, who was here, my executive director, I remember his mother going and getting care from you guys living there. And whenever we asked her what she thought about it, she said that your senior living facility and home, that was, the workers were so great, the facilities were so awesome, that she called it heaven on earth. And so for you to step into here, you're such a mindful guy, great leader. Like, how did you, so we went to your office, and then you gifted us office space, so we didn't have to pay rent, and that was an incredible gift to us in this community of Oklahoma City. And then to see you rise into, or actually step away from a profitable business to come serve your state, over 1 million Oklahomans, wanting to make an impact. That's always who you've been. We can go back to your roots real quick, which was, you've been on the board of nonprofits around the city and the state for, it's coming up on almost 2 decades or something like that. Since you were 22?
Absolutely, yeah.
What was that?
So I started with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Wow. I had some personal connection with folks who have kids with CF, and it's a devastating disease, of course, for families. And for some reason, just got connected and started, so I've sort of always think of myself as a builder. So I like to put things together with a strategy and a structure and a vision for the future, and bring people along into that vision. And so I hadn't even thought about it in 15 or more years, but on that board of the CF Foundation, we did a lot of work around changing some of the fundraising events, and we did a lot of sort of restructuring, and I wasn't the only one involved in that. There are a lot of incredible leaders who are part of that organization, but that's sort of what I love to do, and that's, I think, what you see us doing here today at the Department of Human Services, is building a sort of a new vision for the organization. Yeah,
I love that. Well, that's what you started with whenever I was introduced to this great agency that's doing so many good things, was that, you just bring in an energy, and it's awesome that you share that with everyone. You're an includer, you're a connector, but you are this vision guy that wants to get things done. Like, here's the vision, here's how we head towards it. I'm looking outside the podcast studio right now. One, this didn't exist whenever I came on my first tour with you.
Very true.
I'm looking out there at a cafe being built, and so much open office space. Whenever I first walked in here, it looked like maybe a 1960s old government building with cubicles and not a lot of connection with people.
Yeah, it was very dark, for sure. It was completely quiet. That was one thing I noticed the first day I walked in. There were 600 people working here.
Yeah.
But you could hear a pin drop.
Right.
And people would bring their lunch, and they would heat it up in the break room, and they'd go sit in the cubicle. And for the most part, it was quiet all day.
Yeah.
And that didn't seem like the proper environment for people who are truly trying to serve other people. That it should be a collaborative environment where you sit and you talk with somebody about a case or an issue that you're having or whatever, and then you embrace other organizations as well. And that's what I'm really excited about with this cafe. Is it's open to all state employees. It's not just DHS employees.
Great.
So here on campus, we have 4 buildings that house, a good couple thousand people in total. And those are other organizations alongside whom we serve. So that's the Department of Education. And I can't wait for an opportunity to have joint meetings here in our cafe where DHS and the Department of Education are working to solve problems for kids together.
Yeah.
So that's the vision, and I'm excited about that.
I love that. For me, it's literally changing. This is a physical representation of what's happening internally here. It's changing it from the inside out. And once you change it internally, then you can go out and change it externally. Or as you go, you're wanting to make an impact outside, but you continue to work on yourself. And so I love that that's what's happening here. I've met so many great people who I've really connected with that are literally changing lives. Casey, who's helping us on this podcast, I connected with her right after my first talk to DHS. And there was just so many special people. I was like, wow, this is a very unique people who are called to this mission, which is a must. It's not just a job. You're on the front lines. You're seeing trauma and helping people heal. And as you help people heal and you see the pain that they're going through like that hurts you, And so there's just a lot to it. And so having a great environment where people can work together with their employees here, but also inviting in community partners. I've seen that done here. It's not just lip service.
Absolutely.
You guys don't just talk about it.
And we're just scratching the surface too, my friend.
But you're an open door policy here where any of your community partners can come in here and connect with someone to share what they've learned. And I love that. I think the logo of this, there's a campfire, right? And
yes, there is. Yeah, that's right.
When I lived in the Congo, we sat around the campfire, and that's where the Pygmy people took us to school. And what I mean by that is you have to sit down with the people you serve and ask, is this going to work? Instead of just coming in with a blueprint or a preconceived notion or a cookie cutter solution and say, this is going to work here, and maybe almost strong arm it. I've seen stuff done in other places where people are like, this is what we're going to do, move out of the way, we're doing it. But you guys are taking your time, inviting community partners in and saying, how are you making this work? And
Absolutely.
What have you seen in the community?
And we have a whole structure for that, which is what's really cool is we sat down early on and thought and knew that was the right approach, that in so many places the systems that we run, which are just massive systems, these systems were intended to serve the community, but they were never informed by the community that they served. And so we started to build true listening structures within our organization. We also built the division called Innovation Services, which their strategy, one of their strategies is facilitation, or some of the work they do. And so they facilitate stakeholder conversations. So we bring together, some really difficult conversations. We bring stakeholders together to really vision what a better system would look like. So we start, so one of my goals and a vision that I have for one of these meetings, which hasn't yet happened, but we run a lot of big systems that have lots of dollars connected to it with tons of partners. There are some systems where we have 1,000 community partners all across the state of Oklahoma that work with us in one system. We have some that have 3,000 or 4,000, right? But it would be great if we could, in one of these, start with a difficult conversation, but then say, okay, we have X dollars in this division. We just write it up on a dry erase board. Here's, $150 million. And then here are the outcomes we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to kids who are better prepared for school. Let's just for argument's sake.
Right.
And we bring stakeholders together and we have those two things at the top and the bottom, and then we erase the structure in the middle and say, let's rebuild it, recreate what it takes to get from this place where we are today to these outcomes with this money. And let's all describe it together, define it and build it together. How cool would that be?
Yeah,
we haven't gotten
incredible.
there yet. That's super complicated to try to do, but at some point we're going to get that
But I
done.
love it. So you can deconstruct the old system and say, let's build a better one to get there quicker, faster, more sustainable, with higher impact, that is going to change lives, because that's ultimately what you and everyone that serves at this agency, to our state, that is what they're here to do. That's the job, is impact. And so what do you think on that impact-wise, What do you think is one of your highest priorities or biggest goals or highest hopes for either the people you serve or the people here that you lead, or maybe both?
So for me, if I am making real progress here at this agency, it is progress around poverty. So much of the contributing factor to the work that we do, which are really, a lot of them are symptoms. So we talk about child welfare. Child welfare is just in large part, not completely, but in large part a symptom of poverty. So we get 82,000 calls a year to the Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline. 90% of those are neglect, and 70% of those are related to poverty. Wow. So it's greater than 60% in total of 82,000 calls are related to poverty. So we have an incredible luxury here, and lots of other states do as well, that we house the symptom to the problem, which are those 82,000 calls a year, in the same agency with the potential solution to the problem, which is our Adult and Family Services Division, because we run the social safety net through that program. So that's what people historically would have referred to as welfare programs. We run it in there. So it's poverty fighting, it's employment, it's job finding. It's truly, these are employment programs today. So for me, this is a long way of answering your question, but I'm going to get there. It's a pretty interesting construct. I'm starting to think about the social safety net as a game of chutes and ladders. So I don't want to trivialize this issue with reference to a game board, but it's a pretty good illustration. Right. So you've used the word hope a couple of times, and we're a hope-centered organization. So I'm going to use some hope language as well. Great. So Dr. Hellman would be very proud of us. So at the game of chutes and ladders, if you recall from your childhood, has blocks that go up. And as you progress along the game board, you're hitting some of your goals. Yeah. Right. So that's hope language. Then in some spaces you have ladders which take you from a lower level to a higher level, and those ladders in the context of poverty may be a new job or a greater designation that you've achieved in the education space or whatever, taking you from lower level, a marriage, whatever. But then there are chutes that take you down all the way to the bottom of the game board in some cases, and that may be a material setback in your life. Think about maybe a catastrophic health emergency or a bankruptcy or a divorce or loss of a family member or whatever. These are major issues, and you fall down. Well, the social safety net that we operate really is a one-size-fits-all net that sits under the game board. So you can imagine that, and when somebody falls from space 43, whatever, and that safety net is there underneath to catch you. And so you fall to this certain level of despair to reach out to state government. So really, I think that the social safety net ought to be a smaller, more custom, more nimble safety net that follows us where we go. So as I progress up the game board, this safety net is underneath me and catches me there and puts me back as close as possible to where I fell from. And there's a few reasons why I think that's important. First, it's dignifying. I've worked my entire life to get to space 43, and one event can take me all the way down to almost dying. I mean, like to the bottom of the game board. Yeah. It's also financially wise. It's much less expensive for taxpayers, for me as a person, to be, to sort of catch me where I am and put me there, and then to fall all the way to the bottom and try to get me back all the way to the top. So that's the second. And then the third is this is how we make multi-generational impact. Wow. So that's when my kids start from the shoulders of somebody who's on space 43 versus somebody who's on space 3, they have a much different perspective on their life. So that's multi-generational impact to poverty. So that's how I'm thinking about the social safety net. Now you asked one thing, or sort of where I'm trying to make impact. I see the impact and the way to get there as sort of twofold. How we change that safety net to being a one-size-fits-all approach to a custom approach that follows you, twofold. The first is the actual resources we provide. So that is the training program, the education resource, the job, whatever. It's the SNAP benefits, food stamp benefits that we provide, whatever. That's the resources. But the other approach, which really I see as my opportunity, is changing the distribution model. It is not the safety net itself, but it's how it follows you. And so really the opportunity here is for us who are engaged in the safety net to meet people where they are and provide those services to them right when they fall off and putting you back on right there, right?
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we are absolutely rebuilding the distribution model for human services, and it is very dramatic. It is absolutely, we are deep into it, but we have 6,300 employees, and for generations, many of them have been sort of tethered to their cubicles and their office space and behind a piece of glass. And our intent is to take those employees and embed them in the community. So you can imagine DHS workers not anchored to a building, but in a homeless shelter or in a school or in a hospital or whatever, serving the needs of people where they are when they need us.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's the big deal that we're working on now.
Well, I love that. That's empowerment. That's like trusting them to be out and about and serving and closer to the people they're trying to help the most, right? Not being here, but being deployed. I mean, if I look at that almost I'm a man of faith, but if I look at that almost as church, it's not like just staying in church where in the church bubble, the holy huddle, and just going there once a week. It's like being out in the community and putting that love and compassion in action. Like you can't do it from inside these walls.
No doubt. Well, I mean, think about it. You served the Pygmies in the Congo and Uganda.
Yeah.
How much easier is it to serve from there than it is to serve from, Austin, Texas?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're serving from Austin, it's a little bit more difficult to actually serve those folks.
For sure. And luckily we have Zoom and all these other things we can get on, but it's still not like being there. So I've had to shift from things in the early years where it was more dependent on me and my presence to then empowering them, like you're talking about, where I've got a whole team that are in the community that are living there while they're building homes, drilling wells, and they have their eyes and ears on it, and they've been equipped with the tools, educated with the knowledge, and then I had to come to a part to where I gave more and more and more. I always trusted them, but more and more trust and responsibility, and said, this is yours now, where they take ownership. And I think that's what you're doing with your employees here. This is what they love to do. It's their mission. It's what they're called to do, and you're saying, hey, go do this, releasing them, empowering them, and saying, like, you've got this. Go do what you're called to do in this life. Absolutely. And I think that's great. Then putting up all the red tape, like you have to hurdle this first in here at your station and cubicle before you can get out there and be with the people that you're called to serve.
Absolutely. So I look at my job as we build this vision and execute is, one, remove barriers. You mentioned the red tape, and it's everywhere. I mean, we're a big bureaucracy, government agency. And so as barriers arise and silos are built, our intent is to take them down. And so that's one of my jobs. But the other is also never to be too far removed from the actual work that's happening. And so that's a challenge that you're going to have as well, as you trust people to go do the work, is you can't not engage with the actual person at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That feedback loop, that listening component that you talked about earlier, is something that can never be removed from leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to see that it's actually taking place and happening. And that's what I love about you is like people that community partners, but also people in the community know that like there's been a shift here. There's been a real culture change and shift, and they see you, they see Samantha Galloway, they see so many people out and about in the community, face to face, going to the community partners, seeing them in action, whether it's the homelessness or some of these group homes or foster homes that are doing so well. And you have to have that personal touch to build trust and to see that change is being made. And well, how did you get here? Because you were in business, and I've benefited from being, having you as a donor, but also, receiving free office space and seeing your business in action. And then all of a sudden I was very fortunate to have my faith and hope and strength almost like renewed, seeing your journey coming in here. Like, I got to see, I had my own journey doing it, and then you coming alongside me to support my nonprofit. And then all of a sudden it flipped where, not flipped, but I was able to see like, wow, like look at him go, and it was just awesome. I mean, how did you get the opportunity to come in here and work for the governor and for the state? Yeah,
so that's a great question. I think it's a great story. So, of course, coming from the private sector, I had no sort of connection with state government. In fact, I say it all the time that prior to this job, my last time in the Capitol was in 1993 when I was in high school. I was a page in the House of Representatives, so like literally no connection with state government. Right. In April of 2019, we executed an agreement to outsource the management of all of our senior living communities to a company in Denver. It was just a sort of one of those industry consolidation trends. It was happening, just part of the industry. That was 95 to 99% of my day, and the intent was for me to be around and be the manager, but it really removed the day-to-day operations sort of engagement that I had as CEO of the company. And so I didn't really know what that meant for me from a fulfillment perspective, right? Managing the manager is not all that much fun. So I got a call. So that was April the 1st, 2019. I got a call 16 days later from the head of transition for the governor's team. And the question was, do you have an interest in serving the state? The governor wants to know. And I said, no, I'm good. Thanks for asking. I had never met the governor at the time. And so it was sort of this sort of distant idea. And so I said, no, I'm
almost
I'm
out
good.
of the blue. Almost like, whoa, how'd this happen?
Completely out of the blue. Yeah. And so I just said, no, I'm good. Thanks. And the answer on the other end was, well, if you're 1% interested, we should talk again. And I've always referred to that as a great line.
I mean, that's great. If you ever try to sell anything or get another meeting, whatever it is,
right?
1%.
That's right. So I said, okay, I bit the hook. I'm 1% interested. What does that mean? And so over the course of about the next 10 days, I had lots of conversations with a variety of folks who really knew what the governor was up to and what his sort of personal philosophy looked like. And finally, about 10 days later, I met him for coffee 6:30 in the morning at the governor's mansion, and we talked for an hour and a half about philosophy and faith, and the culture he was trying to build. Because candidly, if we weren't aligned in that, it didn't make any sense for me to jump on board at the largest agency in the state. And at the end of that meeting, I said, "Hey, listen, if you say no to me, I'm good. The world is fine. I'll figure out what's next." And I said, "But if you say yes to me and I say no to you, I'll think about it every day for the rest of my life." And I don't have anything else like that, so I'm not going to start now. And a few days later, he gave me a call and said, "You're the guy." Wow. And so it was exactly 60 days later from that first phone call. Yeah. I was the director of the Department of Human Services, the largest agency in the state. And it's been an unbelievable ride. So that was June of 2019. So I'm approaching my 2-year anniversary now. Yeah. About halfway through that, I was appointed as Cabinet Secretary of Human Services. So I'm now over 32 more agencies, boards, and commissions, all associated with human services. So the opportunity there is not wholly different from the opportunity here, which is working and bringing people together to talk more. And so we bring all of those cabinet agencies together on a regular basis. We have cohorts of finance officers and legislative liaisons and general counsels who all work together now because we serve a lot of the same people. And so the people that we serve deserve for us to collaborate on their behalf.
Collaborate in that open communication with each other. I mean, if someone's in the dark of what one agency's doing and they don't know that this one is doing something maybe better, or we can come together and have a higher impact and serve more people and just change lives. It's you got to know that.
And you don't want duplicative efforts.
Yeah, exactly.
If somebody's doing something, let's all help them do something rather than do the same thing, 7 times. Yeah,
I love that. Well, I actually got to go to a special meeting with you the day that you met with the governor at breakfast.
You did.
And we were with Ryan Llewellyn again and a great friend named Chris Beal also. Mm-hmm. And we were there with you, and you had been given this opportunity. It was the second time it came about. And you didn't know. You didn't know if you actually leave everything behind or put that on pause with your businesses, hand those keys over to someone else to run, and then come over here and do something completely new, out of your wheelhouse, take a risk. And we were with you, and you were going to have to talk with Kelly about it, your wife, who's amazing. But whenever we were there, someone came up and talked, and would you feel comfortable sharing that?
I will.
Oh,
I have not. I don't think I've told this story in the agency yet, so this is great.
Cool,
I'm certainly happy to.
I loved it.
So I left that meeting at the governor's mansion, and I went straight to our church that we go to together. And it was not a traditional church service. It was midweek. I don't remember. It was Tuesday, Wednesday, something. But it was a team meeting for
almost
the church.
like the True North.
It was very similar. I hadn't thought about that, but it was very similar to
for
that.
the employees. Yeah.
Wow, good observation. So anyway, so it was like an all staff meeting for this really large church. I mean, there were 1,000 people in the room. It was in some places sort of like a worship service to begin with. Lots of great music. And so we were invited months ahead of time to go. Ryan and I and you were invited. And so we met and went there, and we were sitting 12 rows up, right in the middle. And Chris, who is a pastor there, is the one who sort of got us the seats. So yeah, we're in this sort of team building deal at the church that we go to, and they have and what's interesting to share also, I don't know if you knew this, but we had only been going to church there for like 3 months.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, like this was not something we transitioned churches. Like we didn't know much about the church. Yeah. We were just learning about it. And so the pastor, the main pastor who was up on stage said, every year we do a summer movie series, and I'd heard about it. We'd never been. We just started going in December. And he said, we never tell anybody what the movies are ahead of time. It's always sort of a surprise, and it gets people coming to church in the summers, which is historically a low period. And he said, but I feel for some reason like I need to tell you all today what one of those movies is. And so he said one of the movies we're gonna show is Instant Family, and it's a movie about the foster care and adoption system. And literally, keep in mind, I had just come from the governor's office talking about this opportunity and told him that if you say yes to me, I'm in. And I say no, I'll think about it every day for the rest of my life. So he said Instant Family, and I'm you can feel the hairs on the back of your neck start to stand up, and you're like, woo, okay, that's a sign. And then he goes, and he starts to really sort of tear up. And even just in a few months, he's perfectly composed in every respect, and you never expect him to sort of tear up or to get emotional. And he said, I feel like I need to tell you that because I'm so blessed to be a part of a church that can empty the foster care system in the state of Oklahoma. And he looks right at me. Yeah, I mean, literally square in the eyes, said, we just need the right partner.
Yes.
And I mean, I fell apart, like literally just started crying. Like you just knew that. I mean, that was certainly the greatest sort of divine, engagement I've ever had.
Yeah. Confirmation.
And I look over, and Ryan, who's our partner, our friend, sat with us, and he was sitting next to me, and he was crying, and you didn't know about it at the time, and so you're looking at us like, what is going on? You guys are crazy. And then within 2 minutes we were telling you the story, and then you were crying. I mean, it was really, it was an incredible moment. Really.
I remember you looking at me and Ryan and saying, "I've got to go talk to Kelly." Like basically meaning like everything's about to change.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm doing this.
That's right.
Those moments of synchronicity and just you're being led in the right direction, or you're doing the next right thing, and here's this opportunity. I can say yes or no, and like if I say no, are things going to be bad? Maybe not, but they're going to stay the same, and it's almost a moment to rise up, or a calling like, hey, you can level up here, up level your life, and like go on this adventure that like you have this opportunity. What are you going to do with it? Sure. And so for you to take that big leap of faith, for your wife to support you, for your kids to as well. I mean, I was so jazzed up. It was one of the most exciting things of that year, or honestly in my life, like supporting a friend is one, because you've supported me in such a deep and meaningful way. When you were saying the chutes and ladders, and having that safety net underneath the bottom, I mean, I can just share and be vulnerable real quick with the audience, whoever's listening. And I hope there's some people that are actually some of the people you lead that are all in these frontline workers, because I want them to know your character. Because, man, I went from being a professional fighter, author, TED Talk guy, big podcaster, whatever, and founder of this nonprofit that publicly had a great reputation, and internally I started going through some really tough stuff right before COVID. I went through a divorce that both of us never wanted, and that was really hard and challenging, and you feel like a failure with that. And then COVID happens, you're isolated, and for me, I had for 10 years pretty good success with my sobriety, and all of a sudden I had a big relapse and setback. And I felt so much shame. I felt like I was going to be all alone on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and things like that. And you, my friend, like you had me over at Thanksgiving. This is before COVID, right before it. But I remember spending time with you and your family, and just complete, full acceptance for me and my pain. And I felt like I was part of the family. That was one of my favorite Thanksgivings I've ever had.
It was one of ours too, by the way. I have video and pictures of you playing hide and seek under our son's bed.
Yeah,
I mean, it's great.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a big spot underneath the shimmy under. I thought it was a good spot to hide, and then both the kiddos got under there with me, and I remember, yeah, you and your lovely bride like all looking around for us, and it was just such a blast at your home, from Thanksgiving dinner to hide and seek, and you were just there for me professionally, supporting my passion and nonprofit, but even more so personally, and that's just the character that you have, and so I love that. You've gone from there, and for me, that was that net, that net of like, I don't have to fall all the way down and lose all of this. Honestly, you being there to support me, Ryan being there to support me, I could have lost the nonprofit that I built for 10 years, that I loved, that was my greatest joy of impact, like in service to the Pygmy people and also kids here stateside. And so the way that you supported me, I know, is the way that you're trying to support your employees and you're trying to support the people you guys serve. And I just love that that's the man that you are. If we look back at even the nonprofits that you've been the board of, I mean, it's the YMCA locally, I think, and it's, the Children's Hospital here. It's the Alzheimer's Association for the state. I mean, it's just... You've got this heart, and I want to recognize you. I know I've been on the receiving end of people saying some things high about me, but I want you to know that you, my brother and friend, and you're leading this organization with a heart of gold. Like, it's one of the most, you have some of the highest integrity of anyone I've ever known and met. And it doesn't matter if it's someone of stature that maybe has some accolades or things like, I might be able to say athlete, this or that. Like, you'll do that for anyone you come across. I've seen it time and time again at Stonegate. Jim, my executive director, was just here saying that he knows it's not just for people in a suit at the Capitol building or someone else or a donor, this or that. It's literally a guy that he came up and walked up on you and was surprised and just, it confirmed to him who you are, someone in the community battling homelessness. I mean, I just think that you're the man for this job. You've been put in this position for a reason, for a purpose, with so much meaning. It truly matters, because for me, I don't know anyone else that if I was governor of Oklahoma, that I would hand select to lead this that matters so much, to take care of the most vulnerable.
I had to breathe in so I could stop you. Man, I don't have a response to that. I'm so thankful for the kind words, of course, and for your role in my life and my family's life. And all of us need support at certain times in our lives, and I'm super thankful for the opportunity to have been there at that time, and I'll be there in future times, and I know you'll be there in times when I need help. And so really, you're right to connect the interpersonal support that we as human beings have for one another with the attempt to build a system that has those same supports for people, broad populations in need. We do deal with some incredibly vulnerable people, and it's hard, especially because a lot of those people don't have somebody like Justin Wren to be there and support you, or whoever in your time of need. And so unfortunately, sometimes systems have to stand in to create that support structure. And so that's what we're trying to build here. And I'm really thankful for you sort of tying that together for me. I had actually never done that, thinking about interpersonal support structures as a correlation to systemic support structures.
Yeah, well, I do think it's really important. And if my life could be a symbol of something or a representation of what you're doing here, I mean, 10 years ago, at 23, whenever I was stuck in addiction, did a suicide attempt, and the setback I had, that chute that I fell into, I mean, I lost everything. My fighting career, friendships, a lot of family that just didn't know what to do with me, right? And it was so hard to pick the pieces back up again. But whenever I had this safety net closer to me of great friends that stepped up in such an incredible way, having Thanksgiving with you, Christmas Day with Ryan, and being loved by this group that we're going to hang out with tonight, of incredible men here in the city, the fall wasn't as, I mean, it was hard and it hurt. It really did. But I was able to get back on my feet so much faster than I was before because of the support that I had. And what I mean by that, let me see if I can put it into some words, is that, okay, a year ago, I was in one of the worst places I've ever been. You showed up, Ryan showed up, so many people did. And, it wasn't so many people, just the people that did showed up in such an incredible way that now, a year later, I can literally say I'm in the best place I've ever been. Best place I've ever been. The nonprofit is making the biggest impact it ever has. We have more donors and support. We're growing. And like for me to look back at a year ago, it's like whoever's listening to this, hopefully you can relate it to them. Like wherever you are right now, I promise you in a year from now, it can be completely different. And you literally can be in the best place you've ever been, even if right now you feel like you're in the darkest place, the most hopeless place. As long as you surround yourself with some hope-filled people that are hope-centered and will share that hope with you, So have hope. I know that we've got to wrap this up in just a few minutes, brother, but what do you think, whoever's listening to this, what's a message you can leave them with and take away, something that you've learned from your life or a hope that you have for them, whether it's someone that's in the agency or it's just someone, a community partner, someone wanting to make an impact. You've done it since you were 22 years old or before that, stepping into a life of service on boards. And you did that time and time again on many of them. Now you're here. You literally are one of the highest impact players in Oklahoma. I know you don't take credit for that. I'm just saying you are, because it's the position you're in, and this place is changing. And through that, not just this building, but the lives of your employees and the people they serve, which is the ultimate goal. So what would you say to someone that's listening to this? One of your favorite stories or one of your just charges that you could give them today?
So I'm starting to formulate this concept around personal fear, and I've been telling this to my family recently. They're going through finals right now, right? But the concept that I'm thinking about is so many of us don't take that risk, don't take the chance, don't put ourselves out there to be vulnerable to failure, and not necessarily failure from the outside, but failure of our own selves. Like we don't do our best sometimes because it's a protective measure against fear, or against the fear of failure. And there's so many times in this work that I'm doing where there's self-doubt. Like I sit in a room in a meeting or whatever. I've been doing some stuff nationally now where you think, okay, you've only been in this for 2 years. Why should you share your thoughts on this front? And when you my advice would be to, when you identify, if you can be self-aware enough to see that you've built up this just individual internal fear of failure, and that's keeping you from taking some step, whatever that is, just push through. Just do it. Who cares if the question you ask is dumb or irrelevant, or the risk that you take or the step that you make and you fail? Who cares? Just keep taking that step. That's the only way for these big systems to change, for the work that you're passionate about to actually get to somewhere that's of benefit to someone else, is to just break through that barrier. Yeah. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. And I'm still trying to figure out how to properly share that concept, but I hope that it resonates with somebody.
Well, I think you're already doing it just by the man that you are, because yesterday I had a conversation with Eric Dickerson.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he is a great support role for this agency and for you as well in your position. And what I asked him was, because I'm getting someone to come help me be better. And I asked Eric, like, what's one of your greatest strengths? And he said, man, one of his greatest strengths is letting us run. He's like, he would rather see us just go, try to get things done, get moving, and really make impact. And just, if we mess up along the way, guess what? We can. There's grace there to know, oh, you're trying your best, you're moving, you're getting things done. I'm allowed to make these moves, and then I can just pick myself up and keep going. And he's going to be cheering for us instead of criticizing, punishing, coming down on us, and then making us fearful of failure. That's literally what he's saying.
So funny.
He goes, since I've come in,
Awesome.
I'm not scared to fail anymore. I can keep going, and I don't have to think. Should I ask him these questions before I do it? Like, no, I'm empowered to go do it. So I think that's a great metaphor for anyone. Like, what's that terminology? It's much easier to turn a moving car, right, or a car in motion, than like turning it when it's slow or stopped. And so just keep moving, putting one foot in front of the other. That's what happened when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. You had to literally just look down at your feet and one foot in front of the other.
I bet. Just think about that right foot going there.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's what has to happen.
Just keep going, get moving. And
in our lives, you've got this risk of just sitting still, and not making a decision is a decision. We've all heard that before, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got to move forward. You can't just sit. And there's been some stress on organizations, this one being one of them, because we move so fast and so much faster than we historically ever have. Yeah. But boy, I tell you what, you can turn around and look at the last 2 years and see that has really piled up into some pretty incredible change.
Yeah, you can get fired up though by going fast, right? But whenever it's too slow, that's defeating, disheartening, discouraging. And so, man, I'm so grateful for the man that you are, how you're leading this so well. I hope that this has given, I've loved this, and I hope that the listener feels more engaged and knows who you are as a man even more. And I want him to keep coming back to this podcast, because 1,000 stories, man, this is truly happening now. There's more hope-filled stuff happening here than not. And I want them to know that you're one of the best men I've ever known, and one of the greatest gifts I've ever had on this earth and in relationship. And so I know you're such a gift to this agency and the people that you serve the most. So,
well, thank you for taking this time and for asking me those questions and putting some real thought into it. Thank you, of course, for your years of friendship and the years to come. Congratulations on really the incredible work that you're doing.
Thank you.
The work ahead for your podcast is going to be incredible, but the work ahead even more so for the people in Africa and those here stateside that you're working with to combat love with, or hate with love is really inspiring. And so I can't wait to hear feedback from your story that we will also share on this podcast, or have already shared. And thank you for taking this time today.
Yeah, two things in closing. Would you come do my podcast?
100%. Count me in.
I would love to share your message and with my
honored
audience.
By that. Thank you.
Yeah. The audience. And then where can people find this podcast, different platforms, YouTube, Spotify, and then where can they find you, social media?
Yeah, so sure. The handles on social media are Secretary Brown or Secretary_Brown on Instagram. So Twitter, Instagram, Justin Brown on LinkedIn on there too. So those are the social handles. We're also, from the podcast perspective, on all of the major, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all those. And then the YouTube channel is Secretary Brown as well, where we do highlights from all of the shows. And so it's a fun place to engage. I tell you, it's a really cool creative outlet. I don't have a lot of those anymore, and I haven't for years. And I really enjoy it. It's fun having these conversations and really celebrating and honoring other people.
Well, my ask of the audience, any listener, is if you've enjoyed this podcast, click subscribe, rate it, review it, and share it with a friend, anybody that you think would benefit from these conversations and these incredible stories. So, Justin, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you, my friend. Great to see you again.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.